As you begin to hear these words, someone, somewhere in the world, has just lost the ability to speak forever. In the next 60 seconds, 3 more people will lose control over half of their bodies, becoming prisoners of their own minds, all because no one around them knew how to recognize extremely simple signs. As you watch this video, thousands of people are crossing a point of no return, where the brain begins to self-destruct in absolute and terrifying silence. What scares me as a mentor is not the disease itself, but the fact that most of you will ignore the silent signs of an internal betrayal, believing the body warns with pain, when in fact it warns with a void. Imagine losing your patient autonomy and your entire history in less than 180 minutes, simply because you mistook a critical alert for passing fatigue or a silly dizziness. Science reveals a counterintuitive reality. Your brain does not scream when it is dying, it simply turns out the lights, one by one, in a cold and calculated manner. If you do not learn to master the biochemistry of survival in the next few minutes, you will be rolling the dice with your own luck, betting that your window of opportunity will never close. I am not here to give you generic tips. I am here to deliver a security code that most hospitals only mention when the damage is already permanent and the wheelchair is already at the door. I will show you how a split-second decision and a test that seems like child's play are the only barriers between your current life and a vegetative state that destroys entire families. If you believe you are safe because you feel fine, you are exactly the person most in danger right now, as negligence is the fuel for disaster. But before I hand over the keys to this definitive neuroprotection, I need to know who is truly committed to protecting their own future and that of those they love. Click the subscribe button and leave your like as a pact that you will no longer be a victim of a lack of knowledge. Your life is worth much more than a click. Comment below, what is your biggest fear when you think about your brain health today? I want to understand your pain so that we can build together a dignified and unshakable aging process. Imagine your brain is a technological metropolis where billions of electrical connections shine non-stop to keep your essence alive. When a stroke occurs, it is as if a silent attack cut the power to the main avenues, preventing oxygen and essential nutrients from reaching the most noble neighborhoods. In less than 60 seconds, what was a vibrant command center begins to transform into a cemetery of memories, where the lights go out never to be lit again. What almost no one tells you is that this destruction makes no noise. It is a betrayal of the biochemistry of survival that occurs in the vacuum of consciousness. While you hesitate, nearly 2 million neurons are sacrificed per minute, as if pages of a unique book were being torn out and burned before your eyes. There is no second edition for your ability to hug or to recognize the face of a child, and it is this loss of quality of life that makes every second a piece of gold. Science shows us that the brain has no energy reserve. It lives on the edge, depending on an uninterrupted flow so as not to enter total collapse. When this flow is interrupted, the cells enter a state of molecular panic, releasing toxins that accelerate the death of their neighbors, creating a terrifying domino effect. Mastering immediate neuroprotection is not an academic choice. It is the only parachute available for someone in freefall toward the abyss of permanent disability. Often the body tries to send smoke signals, but our arrogance in thinking we are fine blinds us to the gravity of what is to come. A subtle tingling or blurred vision are not just passing annoyances, they are warnings that your window of opportunity is narrowing dangerously. The wise mentor knows that prevention is the secret to longevity, but rapid action in the face of disaster is what separates a survivor from a cold, forgotten statistic. It must be understood that after the 3-hour mark, modern medicine, with all its technology, often becomes merely a spectator to a tragedy already written. The split-second decision you take upon identifying a deviation in speech or the strength of an arm is what determines whether you will maintain your patient autonomy. There is no room for waiting to see, because time in this scenario is the most merciless executioner a human being can face in their entire existence. This mental city you have inhabited for decades deserves a guardian who is not fooled by the false calm of a symptom that disappears and returns. By understanding that the brain is a high-precision system with very low tolerance for failure, you begin to see life through a new lens of urgency. But for this rescue to be possible, you need to master the code that opens the door to salvation, a method that transforms any ordinary person into a hero on immediate standby. The method I am about to give you is not just a checklist, but a master key to reading the invisible in just 10 seconds. The first letter, the F for face, requires you to observe the symmetry of life, ask for a smile, and see if one side of the face melts like warm wax, revealing that the cranial nerves have lost their connection to the command center. This deviation is not common muscular weakness, it is physical evidence that the window of opportunity to save that mind is closing before your eyes. The second stage, the A for arms, is where we test the integrity of the electrical wiring that supports your patient autonomy. When asking the person to raise their hands, you are checking if the brain can still send motor commands through the spinal cord without the message getting lost along the way. If one arm wavers or drops like dead weight, understand that the biochemistry of survival has been interrupted and the motor system is in collapse, signaling that the time for effective intervention is now or never. The third letter, the S for speech, touches the essence of what makes us human, our communication and our clarity. When words come out slurred or nonsensical, as if the person were under the influence of a heavy substance, the brain is screaming that the language center has been invaded by chaos. It is a moment for a split-second decision where you must ignore any excuse of fatigue or stress because what you are witnessing is the burning of vital files of the other person's consciousness. The last pillar, the T for time, is what separates the masters of health from the spectators of tragedy because it demands immediate and unhesitating action. Every minute of waiting is a bet that is too high, where the prize is disability and the loss is the total destruction of quality of life. One must not give water, medicine, or wait for the person to take a nap to get better. The only remedy here is the speed in calling specialized help before the clock marks the end of the line. The counterintuitive truth is that many strokes do not cause intense pain, which causes people to underestimate the gravity of the situation until it is too late for neuroprotection. The wise mentor understands that the absence of pain is not the absence of danger, but rather the silence of a system that can no longer even process its own suffering. By mastering these 4 letters, you become a human radar, capable of detecting disaster before it becomes a permanent sentence for those you love. But here lies a profound moral contrast. It is no use knowing the code if you do not have the courage to act for fear of overreacting or being a nuisance. The weight of a false positive diagnosis in a hospital is infinitely less than the weight of a wheelchair that could have been avoided with a simple phone call. Now that you have the map to identify the storm, we need to talk about the subtle warnings the body gives days before the collapse, the so-called silent signs that most confuse with old age or distraction. There is a phenomenon in the biochemistry of survival that is as dangerous as the stroke itself, precisely because it is fleeting, the transient ischemic attack. Imagine that symptoms arise, the arm locks up, the speech slurs, but in 10 or 15 minutes everything returns to normal, as if nothing had happened. This is the moment when most people make the fatal mistake of sighing with relief and going back to the couch, ignoring that they have just received the last evacuation notice before total disaster. What happens in those minutes is a dress rehearsal for tragedy. The blockage occurred, but the body, in a Herculean effort, managed to dissolve it temporarily. However, the warning was given. The system is unstable, and the silent signs show that the artery is at the limit of its transport capacity. Ignoring a mini-stroke because it went away on its own is like ignoring a small fire on the living room curtain, believing that if the fire stopped growing for a moment, the house is no longer at risk of turning to ash. Science warns us that about 40% of people who suffer this transient episode will have a massive and permanent stroke in the very near future if nothing is done. Here, the split-second decision is not to save life in that instant, but to prevent the next attack from destroying your quality of life forever. The wise mentor recognizes that the disappearance of symptoms is not a cure. It is merely a temporary armistice in a war your brain is about to lose definitively. It is at this point that neuroprotection stops being a theory and becomes an urgent investigation in search of arterial blockages or hidden cardiac arrhythmias. Often a simple adjustment in medication or diet could deactivate this time bomb, but human denial makes us prefer to believe in luck rather than science. Understand that your brain does not play at having strokes. Every one of these warnings is an invisible scar that compromises your patient autonomy in the long run. Many patients report to me with tears in their eyes that they felt something strange days before the collapse, but did not want to bother the family or seem like hypochondriacs. This moral contrast between the fear of being a nuisance and the risk of becoming a permanent burden is what destroys the dignified aging of thousands of people every year. Wisdom lies in understanding that it is better to go to the hospital 10 times unnecessarily than to miss the one time your future was being decided in an emergency hallway. Therefore, at the slightest sign that the light has failed, even if it started shining again in seconds, your next destination must be specialized medical diagnosis. It is not about fear, but about a strategic management of your own existence, ensuring that the window of opportunity remains open for you. But beyond knowing how to react to the attack, there is a territory where you have total control, deactivating the triggers that make your brain an easy target for destruction. The naked truth is that 80% of strokes are events that should never have happened, the result of a silent negligence regarding our own quality of life. The number one enemy in this battle is high blood pressure, an invisible executioner that strikes the walls of your brain arteries with every heartbeat without causing a single pain. Keeping pressure under control is not just a numerical goal, but the most profound act of neuroprotection you can exercise to prevent the pipes of your mental city from bursting under stress. Besides pressure, blood sugar acts as a corrosive acid, weakening the structure of your vessels and sabotaging the biochemistry of survival in a slow and cruel way. Diabetes does not just damage nerves, it prepares the ground for clots to form more easily, turning your brain into a minefield where any false step could be the last. Taking control of your glycemia is therefore returning to your organism the patient autonomy that the disease tries to steal day after day without you noticing. Many believe that high cholesterol is only a heart problem, but in fact it is the debris that obstructs the avenues of thought, creating fatal bottlenecks in circulation. These fatty plaques are responsible for turning a healthy artery into a dead end, preventing essential nutrients from reaching where they are most needed. The wise mentor understands that clearing the biological terrain through diet and movement is the smartest strategy to ensure dignified and lucid aging. The habit of smoking, in turn, is like intentionally setting fire to the bridges that sustain your consciousness, tripling the risk of a sudden and devastating blackout. Each cigarette is a message of self-destruction sent directly to your brain cells, drastically reducing your window of opportunity to live an independent old age. However, science brings us hope. The human body is resilient, and by ceasing the damage today, you initiate a restoration process that can reverse years of negligence in a short time. It is not about living in a bubble of restrictions, but about making a conscious decision about which battles are worth fighting to preserve your essence. Small changes, like reducing salt and walking for 30 minutes, act as maintenance engineering on a complex system that begs for care and attention. When you decide to change what you put on your plate or how you treat your stress, you are in practice signing a survival pact with your future self, ensuring that your story continues to be written. Understand that your brain is your greatest asset, and like any castle, it needs high walls and constant vigilance against silent invaders. Prevention is not a burden, it is the freedom of not needing an emergency protocol because you were wise enough to maintain peace within your own borders. Now that you know how to protect your temple, we need to organize this knowledge into a practical action plan so that you and your family are never caught off guard by the darkness. It is fundamental that you understand, with the wisdom of someone seeking dignified aging, that all the guidelines shared here serve as a warning map, but never replace the compass of your private doctor. The biochemistry of survival is fascinating, yet each organism is a universe with its own laws, genetic heritage, and frailties that only clinical follow-up can map with precision. What we presented as the FAST method is a universal emergency protocol, but your preventive journey must be tailor-made for your biological reality. Individuality is the most important pillar of your quality of life, and what works as a shield for one may require specific adjustments for another, depending on their health history. Do not make drastic decisions about medications or severe routine changes without first having a frank conversation with the professional who knows your heart and your arteries. The mentor's role is to light the path and awaken your awareness, but the safe execution of this neuroprotection plan must be done hand in hand with personalized medical science. Understand that fear should not be the engine of your actions, but rather prudence and respect for the temple that is your body. Upon identifying any of the silent signs we discussed, your split-second decision must be to seek immediate professional help without attempting home diagnoses or improvised solutions. Medicine is your greatest ally in preserving your patient autonomy, and using it intelligently means knowing when general information must give way to a meticulous and individualized clinical examination. Often the anxiety of wanting to protect ourselves can lead us down confusing paths, which is why I reinforce patience and dialogue with your cardiologist or neurologist are essential nutrients for your peace of mind. Treat the information in this video as an empowerment tool so that you know what to ask and how to act in a crisis, but let technical science validate every step of your prevention. The balance between the knowledge you acquired today and medical rigor is what truly builds an unshakable barrier against disaster. It is also important that you share this knowledge with your family, not as a burden of worry, but as a pact of mutual care and preventive love. When everyone around you understands the window of opportunity, your safety increases exponentially, creating a protection network that no isolated exam could offer. Responsibility is the greatest act of courage for those who wish to live long and live well, respecting the limits of their own biology while expanding the frontiers of their vitality. Therefore, view this learning as the start of a new phase, where you stop being a passive spectator of your health to become a conscious and well-guided protagonist. Your brain is the guardian of your essence, and looking after it requires both the speed of action in an emergency and the calm of analysis in daily prevention. Now that we have established this ethical and safe commitment, let's consolidate everything we have learned into a closing that will transform this knowledge into a life mission for you and yours. We have reached the end of this vital conversation of ours, and I feel a profound relief knowing that you now hold the code that separates disaster from recovery. Seeing you invest your time to understand the biochemistry of survival is proof that your commitment to life and to those you love is unshakable. I hope these words do not just stay in your memory, but that they become a protective instinct, a light that you will keep lit to dissipate the darkness of any future emergency. Now the next step is in your hands. Go to the mirror, practice your own smile, feel the strength in your arms, and give thanks for the health you have today, promising to protect it with all your might. I will be here in the next video, bringing more truths and tools so that your journey is long, prosperous, and protected from any storm. Stay with God, take care of your temple, and remember, acting fast is the greatest act of love you can practice. Looking back, we realize that the secret to longevity is not hidden in complex formulas, but in the simplicity of a breakfast chosen with love and awareness. By nourishing your brain with these essential nutrients, you are honoring your past and ensuring that your future is filled with clear memories and an elephant's memory. Always remember that every morning is a new opportunity life gives you to start a process of regeneration and healing from the inside out. If this video brought light to your path, or if you feel that someone you love needs to hear these words, do not hesitate to share it and leave your like. To continue receiving these guidelines and to be part of our community that values real health, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our meetings. Thank you very much for letting me be part of your health journey. Take care of your brain with affection, for it is the guardian of who you are.